Breaking news. U.S. military forces just arrested Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, flying them out of the country to face narco-terrorism charges in the United States. If this sounds unprecedented, shocking, like something that couldn't possibly happen in modern international relations, you're wrong. Because 37 years ago the United States did exactly this. And what happened next changed Latin America forever. Let's establish what just happened. On January 2, 2025, U.S. Special Operations Forces conducted a raid in Venezuela, capturing President Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores. They were immediately transported to the United States. Maduro faces charges of narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and corruption. The U.S. government has accused him of turning Venezuela into a narco-state, collaborating with cartels, and using drug money to fund his regime while his people starved. For context, Maduro has been under a U.S. indictment since 2020. The U.S. offered a $15 million reward for information leading to his arrest. But he remained in power in Caracas, protected by military loyalists and backed by Russia, China, and Cuba. Until now. The operation was swift, surgical, and apparently coordinated with elements inside Venezuela who wanted him gone. But here's what most people don't realize. This isn't new territory for the United States. December 20, 1989. Panama City. The United States launches Operation Just Cause, the largest American military operation since Vietnam. The target? Manuel Noriega, the military dictator of Panama. And just like Maduro, Noriega was indicted on drug trafficking charges. But let's back up. How did we get here? Manuel Noriega wasn't always America's enemy. In fact, 4 years he was on the CIA payroll. During the Cold War, Panama was strategically vital because of the Panama Canal, one of the most important shipping routes in the world. Noriega provided intelligence to the U.S. about communist movements in Central America. He was useful. But Noriega was also running drugs. Massive amounts of cocaine were flowing through Panama from Colombia to the United States, and Noriega was taking his cut. He was working both sides, helping the CIA while helping the cartels. By the mid-1980s, the U.S. couldn't ignore it anymore. Noriega had become a liability. He rigged elections, brutally suppressed opposition, and his drug empire was too blatant to overlook. In 1988, the U.S. indicted him on drug trafficking charges. But Noriega refused to step down. He declared himself maximum leader and taunted the United States. He even annulled election results when his candidate lost, essentially making himself dictator for life. Sound familiar? By December 1989, President George H.W. Bush had had enough. Noriega's forces had killed a U.S. Marine at a checkpoint. American military families living in Panama were being harassed. The situation was escalating. So Bush ordered an invasion. Operation Just Cause involved 27,000 U.S. troops, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, the 82nd Airborne Delta Force. It was overwhelming force designed to decapitate Noriega's regime in hours, not days. On December 20th at 1 a.m. the invasion began. Paratroopers dropped into Panama City. Stealth fighters bombed Noriega's headquarters. Within hours, the Panamanian Defense Forces collapsed. But there was one problem. Noriega had escaped. For 4 days, U.S. forces hunted him across Panama. He went into hiding, moving between safe houses, trying to evade capture. The U.S. military blasted rock music outside buildings where they thought he was hiding, Van Halen, AC/DC, trying to drive him out or prevent him from sleeping. Finally, on Christmas Eve, Noriega sought asylum in the Vatican Embassy. He was trapped. U.S. forces surrounded the building. After 10 days of negotiations, on January 3, 1990, Noriega walked out of the embassy and surrendered to U.S. troops. He was immediately flown to Miami, put on trial, and convicted. He spent the next 17 years in a U.S. federal prison. So let's connect the dots. Look at the similarities between Noriega in 1989 and Maduro in 2026. Both were indicted by the U.S. on drug trafficking charges. Both were accused of turning their countries into narco-states. Both refused to step down despite international pressure. Both rigged elections to stay in power. And both were eventually arrested by U.S. military forces and brought to the United States to face trial. But there's another parallel. Both believed they were untouchable. Noriega thought his military could resist a U.S. invasion. He was wrong. Maduro thought his alliances with Russia and China, and his control over Venezuela's military, would protect him. He was also wrong. The message both operations send is clear. If you're indicted by the United States, geography doesn't protect you. Sovereignty doesn't protect you. If the US decides you're coming in, you're coming in. Now, that raises serious questions about international law, sovereignty, and whether the US has the right to arrest foreign leaders. Critics will call this imperialism. Supporters will call it justice. But regardless of where you stand, history shows us one thing. When the US decides to act, it acts decisively. So what does the Noriega precedent tell us about what happens next with Maduro? First, the trial. Noriega's trial in Miami took 2 years. He was convicted on 8 counts of drug trafficking, racketeering, and money laundering. He was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. Maduro will likely face a similar process. The evidence against him has been building for years. The US has witnesses, financial records, intercepted communications. This isn't a political show trial, it's a criminal case that's been years in the making. Second, Venezuela's future. When Noriega fell, Panama didn't collapse into chaos. There was a transition government and eventually, democratic elections. The US helped rebuild Panama's institutions. Venezuela is in a much more complicated situation. The economy is destroyed. Millions have fled the country. There are competing claims to power. But the US has already recognized opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, and there will likely be a transitional government backed by international support. Third, the geopolitical fallout. Russia and China backed Maduro. They invested billions in Venezuela's oil industry. This arrest is a humiliation for them. Expect angry statements, maybe economic retaliation, but ultimately, neither country was willing to militarily defend Maduro. Just like in 1989, when the Soviet Union condemned the invasion of Panama but didn't intervene. The world has changed, but the playbook hasn't. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. 36 years ago, the United States invaded a Latin American country to arrest its leader on drug charges. The world was shocked. The UN condemned it. But Noriega ended up in a US prison and Panama moved on. Now in 2026, it's happened again. And once again, the world is watching to see what comes next. Whether you think this is justice or imperialism, one thing is certain. This moment will be studied in history books decades from now. Just like Operation Just Cause is studied today. And maybe, just maybe, some future history channel will be making a video about the precedent that Maduro's arrest set. If you want more stories about moments that changed history, please subscribe. Because history isn't just about the past, it's happening right now.